You yell barracuda. Everybody says, huh? What? You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
You are listening to The Perfect 10.
This month, we watched Jaws.
Beach is closed. No swimming. By order of the Amity PD.
Some bad hat, Harry. For that, you get the head, tail, the whole damn thing. It was a shark.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Jaws is a 1975 American thriller directed by Steven Spielberg, based on the 1974 novel by Peter Benchley. It stars Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw, along with Murray Hamilton and Lorraine Gary.
When a massive killer shark unleashes chaos on a beach community off Long Island, it's up to a local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer to hunt the beast down.
The screenplay is credited to Peter Benchley, who wrote the first drafts, and actor-writer Carl Gottlieb, who rewrote the script during principal photography. Released by Paramount Pictures on June 20th, 1975, the film was a box office smash. With a budget of $9 million, it would go on to make almost $500 million at the box office. It was the highest grossing film of all time, until 2 years later when Star Wars came out. Jaws is considered the first summer blockbuster. All right, Kit.
I already have my list.
You have your list.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Jaws.
Okay. Jaws, made in 1975, 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Did it feel like it was 2 hours and 10 minutes?
No.
No. Did it feel longer or shorter?
Shorter.
It does. It feels shorter than it
moves
is.
pretty quickly.
It does. It's funny, too, because by the time they go out into the ocean, you're already almost an hour. It's like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that into the movie. And that feels super fast.
Yeah. So, first person on the list is Richard Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss. Yep.
Dreyfuss, who plays Matt Hooper, the marine biologist.
Right.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine. All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks, and that's all.
Richard Dreyfuss was one of the last people cast for the film. He and Robert Shaw both were not cast until almost 9 days before filming.
Who does Robert Shaw?
He plays Quint,
Oh, Quint.
the seafarer. Dreyfuss originally turned the movie down and when it was offered to him. And then he had a movie come out called The Apprenticeship of Dudley Kravitz. Or Duddy. I think it's Duddy Kravitz. He did not like his acting in it. And he thought, oh my God, my career is going to be in trouble. He had already been offered Jaws and turned it down. He immediately called Steven Spielberg and said, hey, I will do that movie. He did say when he was offered the part, I want to see this movie. I just don't want to make it.
Next on the list is Roy Scheider playing Martin Brody.
Yep, Roy Scheider.
Slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this
Roy Scheider. There you go. It's like the Shire.
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
And if you ever watch Lord of the Rings with me, you'll know about the Shire. Roy Scheider was in another movie called French Connection. Steven Spielberg did not want him for the film because he's such a badass in the French Connection, and that is not who Martin Brody is supposed to be. But there were other people that were considered for Martin Brody. One of them is Charlton Heston, which would have been crazy. It would not have been a good idea to have Charlton Heston play
Who's
that
that?
part. He's a guy that is known as like a very manly man. And the whole point of Chief Brody is he's very vulnerable. We'll talk about that in a little bit because I said while we were watching it, I used to think Jaws was about one thing and now I think it's about something else as I've gotten older. But Roy Scheider was at a party and he overheard people talking about Jaws and became intrigued. So that's how he ultimately ended up playing the part of Chief Brody.
Next on the list is Quint, played by Robert Shaw.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.
So good. Robert Shaw is so incredibly good. He did have a whole bunch of issues. Robert Shaw was a drinker and a gambler, and he had a lot of tax issues in Ireland. There were issues with his taxation with the IRS in the US, so he could not stay in the United States while making this film for long periods of time. I don't understand the politics of it, but they would fly him every few days to Canada. This is very bizarre. But Robert Shaw is something real special in this movie. So it's crazy to think he almost did not play the part of Quint. I couldn't see anyone else playing that part. We're introduced to Quint originally in the back of the room, right? After Alex Kittner has been eaten by the shark and his mom puts up a $3,000 bounty. And we see Quint. He scratches the chalkboard, which bothered you. You hated it.
I don't know why I'm really sensitive to that stuff.
Everybody is. Most people are.
No, but like really sensitive.
Yeah, you did. You made like a noise when it happened.
You all know me. Know how I earn a living. I'll catch this bird for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. It's bad fish.
Originally, the way he's introduced in the screenplay was he was sitting in a movie theater watching Moby Dick and laughs at how the whale is portrayed in the film. And they were going to use the real film Moby Dick with Gregory Peck, but Gregory Peck put his foot down and said, absolutely not. And he didn't have any problem with them using it in Jaws. He just hates his performance in that movie. He did not want it out there. So he put his foot down, so they introduced Quint with the chalkboard.
I value my neck a lot more than $3,000, Chief. I'll find him for 3, but I'll catch him and kill him for 10.
Next on the list is Ellen Brody, played by Lorraine Gary.
I don't want him on the ocean.
He's not on the ocean. He is in a boat. He's not going to go in the water. I don't think he'll ever go in the water again after what happened yesterday.
Yeah, she's great. I know we talked about this. The book is different than the movie, and her character plays a bigger part, very unnecessary for what this movie is. So,
Wait a minute. Wait, I don't think my math is right.
what are you trying to figure out?
The movie was made in
75.
75. I thought it was 55.
It's the year I was born. I was not
Yeah,
born in
75.
1955.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm very
You
sure.
look like you were born.
Hey, I don't need this. I don't need this working class hero crap.
Susan Backliny, who played
Chrissy.
What's your name again?
Chrissy.
Yeah, I thought of you because you want a lot of jobs. But what's one of your jobs that you want to have when you're older?
Which one? Stunt actress?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a stunt actress.
Yeah.
American actress and stunt actress.
Yeah, she was a stunt actress, and she became an actor, or I guess moonlighted as an actor. She just died last year. So far of all the people we talked about, Richard Dreyfuss is still alive, and Lorraine Gary is still alive.
Next is Murray Hamilton playing Mayor Larry.
Mayor
He
Larry.
sucks.
He does suck. Larry Vaughn.
Brody, sick vandalism. That is a deliberate mutilation of a public service message. Now, I want those little paint-happy bastards caught and hung up by their Buster Browns.
He's so good at being unlikable. He's very bureaucratic. Even when, he forces people to go out in the ocean on the 4th of July. He won't close the beaches, forces people to go out, goes up to other people and says, you got to get out there. So people take their kids or grandkids, can't quite tell, out into the ocean. And then ultimately when Chief Brody's son Michael goes to the hospital, that's where we see Larry Vaughn, and Brody forces him to sign saying they'll give Quint $10,000 to catch the shark.
Yeah.
Larry, the summer is over. You're the mayor of Shark City. These people think you want the beaches open.
I was acting in the town's best interest.
That's right. You were acting in the town's best interest, and that's why you're going to do the right thing. That's why you're going to sign this, and we're going to pay that guy what he wants.
Next is Jay Mello playing Sean Brody.
What a weird list you have. You jump all the way to Sean. Okay.
Yeah. He was 7.
When he made the movie?
Yes, he was 7.
Yeah, well, he's the little kid. That's not Michael. That's the little.
I know, he looked like a baby.
In the movie? You thought so? When he's crying in the sand?
kind of.
Michael. It's interesting because the only thing that Jay Mello is listed for is Jaws. There is nothing else. Also, I guess the Shark is Still Working documentary from 2007. I don't know what he went on to do, but he's not in film, so he's not even behind the scenes. Sometimes younger people, they get jobs in technical aspects of making films, but I don't know. Still listed as alive, so that's good. That's a plus.
Wow. 4 different people played Sean Brody.
Well, that's because you've got 4 movies, and 4 people have played him in the 4 different movies.
Jay Mello, the original. Mark Gilpin, Mitchell Anderson, and John Pooch.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. All right. Peter Benchley playing the interviewer.
Yeah, he was the news reporter. So Peter Benchley, who wrote it, was the actual reporter. Yeah, there's conflicting reports on whether Peter Benchley approved of the film or not. It's very weird. I think ultimately he did, but perhaps over time you become more desirable as a guest if you're
who's
contrary.
Cassidy?
Who?
Cassidy.
Jonathan Phileas Cassidy. I don't know.
Oh, that's the guy who passes out on the beach.
Oh, okay.
Don't care about Meadows. I don't even know who that is. Michael Brody, played by...
Wait, Meadows, so real fast, Meadows is actually the reporter. So that's Carl Gottlieb, who wrote the screenplay. He plays Carl Meadows.
Who's being ordered around?
He's kind of one of the guys who's doing some of the ordering around. So when Brody goes out to get the swim club, because he doesn't want anyone out there getting eaten by sharks.
Martin, you going to shut down the beaches on your own authority?
Well, what other authority do I need? Technically, you need a civic ordinance or a resolution by a board of selectmen.
That's just going by the book.
Yeah, so that's him. Yeah, he's pretty important.
Next.
Okay, yeah, let's
is Michael Brody, played by Chris Rebello.
Yeah, Chris Rebello. Also, 3 different people play him in the films as well. Or 4 different people, rather.
Okay.
Yeah, the next movie, it's Mark Gruner, Jaws 3D's Dennis Quaid, and then Jaws the Revenge is Lance Guest. I believe, I forget which one. It's been a long time since I've watched anything but the first Jaws. One of the characters, and I'm pretty sure it's Michael, dies multiple times throughout the series. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at it again, but I think he dies in Jaws 3D. I think Dennis Quaid dies, and then I think he dies again. He's back alive and dies again in Jaws the Revenge, but whatever. Those movies are not really worth talking about here.
Next on the list is Mrs. Kintner, played by Lee Fierro.
I just found out that a girl got killed here last week, and you knew it.
You liked her?
Yeah, I did. I liked that she slapped Brody.
She did it for real. Hit Roy Scheider for real, because when she would do it, you have a huge smile on your face. Man, you like violence.
I really do. I really do.
So when she would pull her punch, you know what that means? Yeah. This is a visual podcast now. So since it's an audio podcast, yes, you don't actually throw the punch. Same thing with a slap.
Where you do the...
Yeah, this is going to play well. Yeah, like, that's a stage slap. Yeah. Yeah, that was good. That's a stage slap. So that's a little different.
Okay.
Not a whole lot, but in the film, it looked too fake. So they basically said, just hit Scheider. So she hit him 17 times. One of them, one of them knocked his glasses off, and he said they hurt like hell.
Chief Brody?
Yes?
So I want to tell you a very fast story because I thought this was really cool. Several decades after the film was released, Lee Fierro, who plays Mrs. Kintner, walked into a seafood restaurant and noticed a sandwich on the menu called the Alex Kintner sandwich. And she loved it, and she commented that she played Alex Kintner's mother many years ago. So the staff ran to the back and got Jeffrey Voorhees, the manager of the restaurant, who happened to be the actor that played Alex Kintner. That's why they did it. They had not seen each other since the movie. So it was years later, and mother and dead kid get to reunite. So I do want to talk about this too. What an amazing moment in that film. So we have Tippet, the dog. And this, yes, The second you...
I don't care about the boy. I care about the dog.
Well, the second you it was a very funny moment. The second you realized that dog was probably... It was the guy's throwing the stick and he's going, Tippet, Tippet. And then we see Alex Kittner go out with his raft. And then there's the heavier woman who's on in the water. And that's where we see somebody in the water because you think it's a fin and then it turns out to be someone's head. I think that might have been that somebody had Harry. And the second that happened, you went, oh, that dog. And I think you said, is that dog going to be all right? And Mommy's like, no.
I hate dog violence.
Yeah.
Animal violence is the only violence I hate. Like, humans, I don't care. Humans, I'm not counting as animals. I know they're mammals, but
good point.
I don't really care.
Kid Science Corner. It was a great tense moment on the beach. But yes, poor little Alex Kittner, whose fingers were all pruned, ends up getting eaten by a shark.
Next up is Jeffrey Kramer playing Hendrix.
Yeah, he's the cop. I love him. He's so dumb, and it's great. But it's also like that's the type of cop you would kind of expect on an island where nothing happens. They don't really get into this too much in the movie, but Chief Brody was a cop on the streets of New York City. And they move to Amity. And the idea is he is tired of the crime and violence of the New York streets. So he wants to go somewhere peaceful. And the whole point of this is he leaves that behind for something peaceful and then encounters a much larger threat in the shark.
Oh, okay. Next on the list, Alex Kittner, played by Jeffrey Voorhees.
There you go. Jeffrey Voorhees... Different name, but what is the name? Was that your water? That was
That was my phone.
Your phone has a fart sound on it? That's hilarious.
I forgot to turn my sound off.
What is the name of the killer in Friday the 13th?
Michael, I think?
No, that's
no,
Halloween.
Freddy?
No, that's Nightmare on
one?
Elm Street.
Which one?
Friday the 13th. He wears the hockey mask.
Oh, what's his name? David?
David would be a great name for
David.
Oh, look out, guys! It's David. Hey, guys, or they call him Dave. He's like, no, it's David, please. Jason, but
Jason.
His name is Jason Voorhees.
Last one on the list that I'm gonna say: Craig Kingsbury.
Good.
Playing Ben Gardner.
Yeah, so Ben Gardner is the head in the boat that dies.
That is horrifying. I did not expect it. If we watch movies and something like that happens, am I allowed to curse?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not even going to pause this out. You can curse in those moments, but nothing too crazy.
Okay.
An OS is okay.
Wait, what?
Oh, shucks.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's scary as hell. So the one thing about that was when Steven Spielberg watched the screening of this movie for the first time, the audience reacted so much to the first time you see Jaws come out of the water, the shark. They never call it Jaws in the movie, but the first time we see the shark come out of the water, the audience reacted. So because of that, Spielberg went back and said, I want to put another jump scare. They didn't call it that then, but I want to put another shock moment like that earlier. And that's where the Ben Gardner scene came from. However, when they filmed it, they didn't like the look of it. So what they ended up doing was reshooting it in the editor, Vera Fields, very famous editor. They shot it in her swimming pool in Los Angeles. And to get that cloudy look, they took milk out of her refrigerator and just poured it into her pool so that it was very cloudy around. So when that head comes out and you see that moment that scares you, that's what's happening there.
Wait, can I rewatch that part real quick?
Actually, you know what? Go ahead.
Okay.
Type in Ben Gardner's head. Oh, you have it.
So this was shot in a pool?
Not that. That was likely shot in the ocean.
How did they get lights? Never mind.
You can put lights. You have special lights.
Oh, okay. Oh, here it is. Times the 2. This is the most horrifying scene ever.
I know.
Forget about the shark. That.
Okay. So,
Spooky.
it's pretty scary stuff. So, Craig Kingsbury.
The second time I saw it, like, it's not that scary. The first time.
Well, you're also watching it out of context. When you watch anything out of context, it's usually not as scary. You got to remember, all that tension is built up, and then that happens. I don't jump anymore. I've seen this movie so many times, but when I saw this in a movie theater and everybody jumped, I didn't jump, but it was a different feeling, but I laughed. And then Brendan, you know Brendan and Amy, Brendan was on the other side of the theater and he laughed as well. And we know each other's laughs very well because we've worked together forever. And it was just very funny to me. I was like, I know where Brendan is. So Craig Kingsbury, who plays Ben Gardner, was the basis for a lot of Quint, the character of Quint. Craig Kingsbury was actually an islander. He lived there on the island. He wasn't an actor. Robert Shaw worked with him to kind of develop who Quint was. There were some other people like Frank Mundus, who was another islander, and a guy named Lynn Murphy. So all of those people kind of combined to create who Quint was. But most people say that Craig Kingsbury was basically Quint. He even looked like him.
Let me just speed through the last three.
Okay.
Jonathan Philly, who plays Caspi.
Right.
Ted Grossman, who plays Estuary Victim.
That's the guy in the pond whose leg gets bit off and falls to the bottom.
Okay. Robert Nevin, who is a medical examiner.
Yeah, the medical examiner. He's the one who, he says it's a shark attack, and then he says maybe it was a boat accident. And then Matt Hooper, when he comes into town, says this was no boat accident.
Well, this is not a boat accident. It wasn't any propeller. It wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark.
So the one person that you didn't mention that I do want to mention, I will never not mention her. There are not a lot of female characters in this movie.
Dern.
What?
Lauren Dern.
Where do you see her?
I don't know. Harry Shearer.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but yes. So
Frank James Spark, Jonathan Cyril.
So Carl Gottlieb was part of an improv group called The Committee, and they were actually brought in that scene where we first are introduced to Quint, where Mrs. Kittner's put up the $3,000 for somebody to, find the shark. Gottlieb helped bring in his group that were improvisers to do, they weren't in the physical scene visually, but they did a lot of audio. So when you hear people saying, a week, that's like the whole summer, and they're saying all this stuff in the background. That was people like Michael McKean, who's a huge actor. He played Lenny on Happy Days, but many, many more things than just Lenny. He's also in Spinal Tap with Harry Shearer, who was in that as well. So you mentioned Harry Shearer.
This guy.
Yep, that's Harry Shearer. He's also in Spinal Tap, which part 2 is coming out. We'll go see it without Mommy because she hates it.
Principal Skinner?
Up yours, children.
And Catherine O'Hara was part of that group, who plays Lydia Dietz in Beetlejuice, and Kevin, I forget his last name.
Osmer?
Settle a little tiff that Kevin and I are having.
Let's be honest, Raymond, it's not a tiff, it's a row.
And now it's a scene.
Kevin McAllister's mom in Home Alone.
I love her!
Yeah.
Kevin!
So she's also one of the voices you hear in the background there. She's part of the committee.
Oh.
So there you go. The person I want to talk about really quick before we end this segment is a woman named Polly. Because Let Polly Do the Printing is something that Joel Rickenbach and I used to say to each other all the time.
Beach is closed. No swimming. By order of the Amity PD. And let Polly do the printing.
What's the matter with mine?
Let Polly do the printing.
Her name's Peggy Scott, the actor. We would say, let Polly do the printing. And the other thing we would always say is, they're out karateing the picket fences.
Now, we got a bunch of calls about that karate school. It seems that the 9-year-olds from the school have been karateing the picket fences.
So I got to give Peggy Scott her due. Okay, let's talk about something that we talked about previously in another episode for Nightmare on Elm Street with guest star Kristen Finger.
Possibly coming back this Halloween?
I think so.
Nice.
Freddy Krueger has 10 minutes of screen time in Nightmare on Elm Street. We previously said that. We mentioned these other people, but who do you think has the least amount of screen time? Beetlejuice in the movie Beetlejuice, Darth Vader in the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, or the shark in Jaws? Who has the least amount of time that you see them on screen?
The dog just kind of dying. Does that count?
No.
No.
Because that's not even a character in a movie. They're just like a little nothing. So Tippet does not get to count.
But like him not coming back.
No, it still doesn't count. Okay. These are like titular characters or
the shark does appear a lot.
No, it does not.
If you think about it in the second half of the film, it does.
No, it does not.
Yes, it does.
4 minutes of screen time.
What the?
That's it. There are 4 minutes of entire screen time. That is the least amount. Darth Vader has 12. Beetlejuice has 17. What you're thinking about, we see the yellow barrels. We see the boat get hit. We see...
What about the fin?
No, I think the fin counts as the shark. You do not see the shark more than 4 minutes in this whole movie. That's crazy, man. The whole movie's about the shark, and it's only in it for 4 minutes. This is Kit added supplement.
Many of the sharks that were used in the movie were only tested in fresh water, not salt water. So they started deteriorating in the salt water when they filmed in the ocean, and that caused machine malfunctions. That is why the shark only got like 4 minutes of showtime, because it just kept breaking down, and Spielberg didn't want the movie to like just be bad because the shark is always breaking down, but that's why the shark's mouth is always like stuck open.
There you go. The shark was obviously a model.
Yeah, obviously.
They had 3 of them.
Frank James Sparks was one of the divers who was actually in the cage.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll talk about him in a minute, okay?
Yeah, stuntman and stunt actor. Also in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock.
His name's Frank James Sparks?
Yeah. Sparks was Navy SEAL before he entered stunt business.
Yep. So we'll come back to him if you don't mind. But we will come back to him. The first day of filming the model shark, it sank to the bottom of the ocean. They needed to do so much work on the sharks that there is a documentary called The Shark is Broken. There is a play that Mommy and I saw on Broadway that was written by Robert Shaw's son called The Shark is Broken, which is about Scheider, Shaw, and Dreyfuss. It was awesome. They could only film with the shark when it was working, obviously. So it really prolonged production. This production was 156 days, and it was only supposed to be about 55. So it obviously went way, way over. It was supposed to come out in the winter. That didn't happen. It came out in the summer, which is when typically you release movies that, there's no other way to say it, they would suck. They would dump movies because people did stuff in the summer. They would go to the beach. They would go on vacation. They would not go see movies. Jaws changed all that. Jaws became the summer blockbuster, and it was really because this stupid shark was always broken, and they had to shoot around it, ultimately shoot around it. That's why it only ended up having 4 minutes of screen time. Spielberg said that he started to believe that it's what we don't see that is truly frightening. And that is what makes this movie work so well. So you thought the shark was in this movie a lot because you always felt its presence.
Yes.
But it is not. And that there is something to be said about the filmmaking to make you feel like the shark is as present as it is when it absolutely is not. What was the name of the shark?
Bruce.
Bruce. Do you know why it's named Bruce?
No.
Do you think it's named after Bruce Springsteen?
Kind of.
No. Do you think it's named after Bruce Valench?
No.
It's not. Do you know who Bruce Valench is?
No.
Okay.
I kind of just think he's just Bruce.
He's just Bruce. Actually, Steven Spielberg's lawyer's name was Bruce.
What the?
And he named it after his lawyer.
Lawyers?
Well, some lawyers are. But there was another name for the shark that Spielberg used quite a bit, and I thought you would prefer this name. They would call it the Great White Turd.
Why?
Because it never worked, and it was they were all so annoyed at it. Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts is where they ultimately filmed this. Amity doesn't exist, but they used Martha's Vineyard. They talk about Martha's Vineyard in the movie, but that is where this took place. A couple reasons it took place in Martha's Vineyard were when they were originally looking at other parts of Massachusetts, there was a bad storm and they got pushed into Martha's Vineyard and they really liked what they saw. But one of the biggest reasons was even when they were 12 miles out to sea, the bottom of the ocean was still only 30 feet down. So it wasn't crazy deep, and it allowed the shark to function, but it also allowed them to film and set up to be able to film out far enough away. Because Steven Spielberg, it was very important that you not see how close they were to land. Because psychologically, you even said it at the end of the movie, oh, they're not that far because they were going in.
Yeah.
And that does give you a sense of relief because, like, in your mind, it's like, well, they can always just go to land. And he didn't want you to feel that as a viewer. He wanted you to feel like, no, they're in the middle of the ocean. They cannot go to land. They have to fight this beast or die. Yeah. Do you remember when we were watching the movie and I said, ooh, a shooting star?
Yeah.
Do you think that was a real shooting star?
No.
You don't?
Actually, yeah.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah.
So the answer is it was not. But for years, they swore it was. Everyone said it was. There was a Making of Jaws documentary in 1995 that in the documentary they say, oh, we happened to get that shooting star. It was not an optical effect. However, years later, it was proven that it was in post-production because they were doing that shooting during the day with a filter over the lens. It's called day for night shooting. And you wouldn't have seen a shooting star in the day. So it was not real. And Steven Spielberg uses shooting stars as kind of a calling card in a lot of his films. All right, let's talk a little bit about your guy, Frank James Sparks, real quick, okay? Mm-hmm. Something happened with Frank James Sparks, who was the diver, that changed the end of this movie. So in the book, I think I told you this when we were watching it, and this is a spoiler for both the book and the movie for anybody listening. In the movie, we know Quint, Brody, and Hooper all go out to sea to kill the shark. Mm-hmm. The shark kills who?
Quint.
Yeah. The shark kills Quint. In the book, the shark kills Hooper too.
But not in the movie.
In the screenplay for the movie, the shark kills Hooper too. However, they hired, they're shark photographers basically, named Ron and Valerie Taylor, who went to South Australia and they took a little person actor, and that's Frank James Sparks. Frank James Sparks was a little person, and put them in the cage. And the reason they did that was when you intercut with Matt Hooper, the shark seems that much bigger because we already established how tall Matt Hooper is. He's, Richard Dreyfuss isn't incredibly tall. He's probably about like 5'6", 5'7". But if you have a little person and then this big shark that is maybe in real life 16 feet, it'll look bigger. Yeah. And that was the point. So what happened was when they were filming, the shark destroyed the cage and they filmed it without Frank James Sparks in the cage. And he said, I'm not getting in that cage now with that shark. No way in hell. So they gave the footage back to Steven Spielberg and everyone and said, well, the best shots show the cage, but it's empty. And Spielberg said, well, then we'll change the ending. And that's why Matt Hooper lives. That's why he swims out of the cage. Yeah, because that shark flopping on top of the cage, they needed him to not be in the cage anymore. So nowadays, maybe they would have used some sort of CG and put him back in. Who knows? But they decided, we'll let him live. I actually like that he lives in the movie more than in the book. He has to die, and there's reasons. Yeah. But whatever. Read the book, don't read the book. I read the book twice. First time I loved it. Second time, I didn't. So there is a show called Mythbusters.
Yes.
I think you would love this show. It's not on anymore. But the people on Mythbusters would basically take things, they're not necessarily conspiracy theories, but it's like myths of what people believe would happen in situations. And they would test them out. I know you're obsessed with the Titanic.
Yeah.
And whether the Titanic really sunk. It did. Don't shake your head no. Yes, it did.
I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
What's the one guy? Jack. Yeah,
Yes.
He fit on the door.
They did that on Mythbusters and proved, yes, he would have fit on the door. He would have fit on the door. And this was asked to James Cameron, who directed the movie Titanic, and he was furious.
Like, Rose is the bad guy of Titanic.
She's not.
She really is, though. Although, I feel like the reason that he didn't get on the door was just in case the door would sink. He didn't want it to sink because then you would have to push it back up.
He was afraid it was going to topsy-turvy and not. Who knows? But so they did that. That was the point I wanted to make. They busted that myth. Here are some other myths they busted from Jaws. I loved this. All right, so there is a point which always sits weird with me because we don't have a definitive answer to this. When Quint has the fishing rod and something grabs hold of it, it's where he gets Brody to pour water on the reel.
Yeah.
Hooper says, cut it loose. It's not the shark. And we never know if it was the shark or not. We don't know. Hooper has one belief, Quint has another. We do not know the definitive answer. However, he holds the piano wire up and says,
Anything fish, eh? Marlin, stingray, get through this piano wire. Don't you tell me my business again.
Well, piano wire does not have the tensile strength needed to be used as an adequate shark catching line. They proved that on Mythbusters. I thought that was awesome.
Nice.
The end of the movie, how does Brody kill the shark?
Just like I said.
Yep. You predicted it.
I said just throw the oxygen tanks at them because they could explode. So they had it in his mouth.
He hit it a couple times in the nose and then he threw it in his mouth.
Yeah.
And then what did he do?
And then he took the rifle and shot at it a few times, kept hitting the shark.
He kept missing it, and then when he finally hits the tank,
it explodes.
Boom.
And so does Quint.
That's true. We did talk about that. If Quint, he did not survive, but if he did survive, he sure as hell didn't then because he blew up to bits. Yes, that is accurate. So one of the things that they myth busted is they shot at scuba tanks with different rifles and guns. They do not explode like that. They just don't. They might let air out, but they don't explode. So that was myth busted. They did find that a great white shark can, in fact, ram a dive cage with enough force to damage or destroy it. They also found that a great white shark does have enough power to punch a hole in the side of a wooden boat under the right circumstances. However, there is no example of this ever actually happening before. A shark's maximum striking force is great enough to pull barrels underwater, but the force a shark can generate in a continuous pull is insufficient to keep those barrels underwater. That I'm fine with because the whole point of this was this particular beast was something abnormal anyhow. A shark cannot generate enough force to pull a boat backwards with enough speed that waves break over the stern. Now, Mark Rober gave us one, right? Which was, though sharks are attracted to bodily fluids, specifically blood, they are no more attracted to human blood than any other blood.
Yeah.
So chumming with fish is no different than chumming with, if a person's bleeding. So if you have a cut on your hand and you go in the ocean, that's no different.
Yeah, although a tiny little cut is not going to drag a big white shark.
Wow, I ain't risking it. But if it does, and they did this on Mythbusters, punching a shark in the nose, eyes, or gills will often cause it to flee or at least back off briefly.
Yeah.
So keep those things in mind. This is what I always thought Jaws was about. In storytelling, we use the term man to represent protagonist. Mm-hmm. I know that annoys you because it could be man, woman. So I'm just going to say person instead of man or protagonist. In storytelling, there is person versus person. There is person versus self. There is person versus nature. And then there are types like person versus society, person versus technology, versus supernatural, versus fate. But typically it's person versus person, person versus self, or person versus nature. I always thought this movie was about person versus what?
Nature?
Nature, because of the shark. The shark is a big... As I've gotten older, I don't think that anymore. I actually think this is person versus self. Because in the end, this is all about Brody. Yeah. And you have Hooper represent science, And Quint represents, I'm going to say faith, even though it's not necessarily
I was gonna say
faith.
social media.
Well, there's none back then. No, the idea, usually science and faith are the two things that are antithesis to each other. Quint knows how to do things. There's something, we'll talk a lot about like street smarts versus book smarts. Hooper is book smarts. Quint is street smarts. Quint knows how to do stuff because he's grown up doing it. Hooper knows how to do stuff because he's grown up with money and privilege and the ability to do it under controlled circumstances. So his is more science. Quint is more faith. And then you have Brody in the middle, who brings both of these men in. It's almost like a devil and an angel on your shoulder. He's constantly going between the two, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It is not until Brody himself says, I am going to take charge. And in a weird way, he takes a piece of Quint, which is the rifle, and he takes a piece of Hooper, which is the canister that he blows up, and that's how he defeats the shark. But I think that Brody himself, he is the protagonist and in a way his own antagonist. So something awful came out of Jaws, and as fine upstanding vegans, it would be wrong for us not to bring this up. And Steven Spielberg himself is very upset by this. Peter Benchley said he would never write this book now because what the book did and what the movie did was it vilified and built this fear in sharks. And the reality is, because even before we watched this movie, you said sharks don't like eating people.
Yeah.
Something to that effect, which is 100% true. Sharks, when they attack people, it is now strongly believed that they are attacking what they think is something else because they have no desire to eat people. They don't really, people aren't part of their food chain. They're going after a turtle. They're going after the motions that a person happens to be doing in that moment. Obviously, for surfers and whatnot, that does very little to make them feel better when they're attacked by a shark, if they live through it. But the fishing industry, it was very easy for them to absolutely annihilate the population of sharks because people were so afraid of them. Peter Benchley said this, and I thought it was awesome. Knowing what I know now, I could never write that book today. Sharks don't target human beings, and they certainly don't hold grudges. So it's also important to know that Peter Benchley is now a shark conservationist. So when you go in the ocean this summer, don't kill sharks. That's, I guess, the message. As always, we end talking about the 1001 movies you must see before you die, edited by Steven Schneider. Is Jaws on that list?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, it is. This is like one of the best movies ever made. It is. Absolutely, it's on that list. Jaws has an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. Common Sense Media says it's good for 12 and up. And this part blows me away. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 97% fresh rating.
Whoa.
That's, dude, for a movie that old.
That's insane.
That is unbelievable. I do love, too, it's got an ad. You can buy tickets from Fandango because it will be back out in the movie theaters this summer. June 20th. That is its 50th anniversary to the day when it was released in the U.S. So on June 20th, it's a Friday. Yeah, if you want to, I'll totally do it. On a scale of 1 to 10, which is what we should do on a podcast called The Perfect 10 Podcast. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being amazing, where would you rank Jaws?
So 1 bad, 10 amazing. Okay. I would rank Jaws as 6. Like, it's...
Okay.
Let me explain my answer.
Yeah.
Like 6.5 because it was really good. I feel like they took too long on some scenes.
Okay.
And they could just, like, moved on when they didn't.
That's fine. Yeah, listen, I think Jaws is a 10. I mean, I think the movie is a perfect 10. I get what you're saying. Are you doing Jaws shanties?
No.
I was hanging out with people.
I didn't even realize I was
You were whistling? I was hanging out with people today, and I mentioned that we watched Jaws, and I said I was very surprised that you liked it at the end because there are no female forward characters.
Yeah, I hated that.
Ellen Brody is probably the most, and she's just... This movie 1,000,000% does not pass the Bechdel test. Like, there's nothing in it that would... it's very white, and it's very dude-centric. So, there you have it.
Yep.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, The Perfect 10 Podcast. That's 1010, The Perfect 10 Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can write to us at Perfect10 The Podcast. That's Perfect10, TEN, The Podcast at gmail.com. If you happen to be listening to this before May 17th or on May 17th and you have no plans tonight, come to SideQuest Theater in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to see a show called Fins. I have friends Sarah and Ryan who do this incredible show that is too difficult to explain. It is improvised. It is well produced. It is just this amazing, amazing show. I've helped do a little marketing for it. I can't wait. So I will be there. Kit will probably be there. Mommy will probably be there.
Buy tickets.
Kit, what have you been watching, reading, playing, listening to? I can think of one thing that would probably fit all of them. And it's a little musical called The Descendants.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy doing it?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so fun. My school did a play. I was not able to have an actual character in it.
You were a chorus. It's fine.
Yeah,
Or
we
swing.
were the
Yeah.
Ordonian chorus
Yep.
because we're only in 5th grade and they just made people to kind of like add more to the background and stuff.
Yeah, it's the
So-
6th, 7th grade. It's the middle school that does the play.
Yeah, the middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th. Some people in it were amazing.
Yeah.
And
I think everybody was amazing.
I'm not going to say their names, but there are 3 sisters. 2 of them were in it. One of them was not allowed to be in it because they were too young.
She's a year younger.
She's a year younger than us, so even if she was in 5th grade, she would be in the Ordonian choir.
They're awesome.
They were so good.
They're so good.
And
all 3 of them can be in it next year, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Can I tell you how impressed I was by all of it?
Sure.
Just because I'm used to high schools having high-end plays.
Yeah.
You guys sounded spectacular. I was blown away.
The oldest sister, I'm not going to name her because of privacy reasons.
Sure.
So she played the role of Maleficent, which if I were to be in Descendants, I would want to play that role.
Yeah,
it's
BA role.
It's the best role.
Yeah.
I already have the one song memorized.
I think most people would argue that Mal is the best role. Mal's a great role, but you're right. Maleficent, the mom, is so
an
good.
amazing role. Yeah. There is another person in it who I'm not going to name, but she was fairy godmother. She had to sing a really high note. It's a little solo kind of. Yeah, although she had to sing it like really high. Like it was really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was really fun. If we ever did it again, I would 100% audition for Maleficent.
I love it.
It's like the perfect role because Mal has a lot of lines. I don't really
It's a lot of memorizing. Yeah.
I can memorize that much.
Yeah.
Then again, they did have since December in it.
Yeah, but
They did.
it's still, I know, but it's still a lot, dude. But I get what you're saying. She was great. The actor who played Mal was excellent.
Maleficent is the perfect role because not too many lines, very empowering. It's really fun. Everyone in it was amazing.
The only thing I would add for Watch, Read, Play, Listen is Mommy and I just finished watching season 1 and 2 of Severance, and oh my God, did we love it. All right, give me an ending. What's our ending here?
I don't know.
Hey. Yeah. Are you going to go in the ocean now this summer, or you think you're just going to hang out on the shore?
Oh, I'm going to go in the ocean.
You're not afraid of no sharks?
No, you just...
You're just going to give him the old bop to the nose. Yeah. All right. Good luck with that.
Right.
I'm going to stay home.
No.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.